My name is Tracy Poppy, and I'm a training specialist with the State of Nebraska Training Team over at Department of Administrative Services. This is our next session of Ask the Experts, and we're really excited that you're here today and our 5 panelists. So many of us use social media every single day, so why not incorporate it into our work? And we're going to talk about different ways that you can do that, how to get more followers, and lots more to come. Before we go too far into this, I want to let you know that I am recording. And if you're not okay with that, you can hop off the call. It's being recorded, so you can watch it later in EDC. For anyone else that maybe isn't going to be able to stay the whole time, or maybe you know someone who wanted to attend and couldn't, we will put the recording on EDC. It'll be there in the next week or two so that you can go in and you can sign up, register for the course just like you would any other one, and then watch the video, and then you get credit for it that way. There is more than just you on the call today. I know for some of you it looks like you're the only one. For this session, we actually have everyone muted and not being shown. We do that because we've got right now over 80, almost 90 people on this session. And so therefore, we want to make sure everyone has a voice in the chat box. So if you do have questions, and when you have questions, please go ahead and just type those in the chat box, and Brian Spick will be able to help you get those questions answered at the end. So please make sure when you click on the chat box and you click the send to Brian Spick, S-B-I-K, and he'll make sure your questions get answered. And then, of course, if we run out of time and we don't have time to get your questions answered, we will get answers to those and follow up. Get that information in EDC. If you do experience any technical problems, maybe you can't hear or you can't see, try logging off and logging back in. Sometimes that helps. Or you can contact the OCIO help desk at 402-471-4636, and I'm sure they'd be happy to help you. Last but not least, we're talking about social media today, so make sure right when you're done with this Ask the Expert session, you get on your social media and like us, right, your training and development team, but also Department of Administrative Services. Like us, follow us, because there's lots of great information out there that you might be missing out on. We're on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and LinkedIn. So make sure you get on those and follow us. All right, well, let's dive in. Again, thank you for joining us. I'm excited. We have 5 panelists here, 5 experts to share information about social media. We've got, let me find my list here. We've got Shauna and Kristen with Game and Parks. We have Mackenzie with Department of Transportation. Cody Thomas is with State Patrol. And Rochelle is here with DAS's Talent Acquisition Team. So on behalf of your training team, we welcome you. We appreciate you being on today. And we'll just start by handing it on over to Shauna and Kristen and ask that you introduce yourself and then share your information. All right, I have made Shauna the presenter.
All right, thank you. Let me see if I can share my screen here. Okay, cool. Well, as you know, I work for the Nebraska Game and Parks Commission. I started here in March, and prior to that, or I guess I should say here, I am the Public Information Officer and Public Relations Manager, and so I oversee a team of people who are all working to get our messaging out. Kristen, who is gonna take over this presentation kind of in the middle, is the actual social media manager. And so she spends the majority of her time doing all of the amazing things that everybody sees on the other end. I'm going to go ahead and give a short overview of social media. My understanding and basis in social media started as a journalist, as a newspaper reporter, which is where I discovered how important social media is, especially in 2020. And then the last 4 years, I used it at the School of Natural Resources to try to get the message out about that school at the university. So one of the key things about social media is that it's not a way to be a megaphone and to get all the information out into the universe. It's meant to be a way to build relationships with the people around you, with your constituents, with your stakeholders, the people who have still yet to meet you. And so that's kind of our mantra here, is that we want to use it as a way to connect with other individuals and not just use it as a way to spew out information. Let's see if I can advance my screen. All right, so what does each social media platform focus on? Here we have a lot of social media, but we use 5 different platforms the most. And so those are the ones that we're kind of going to talk about the most today. The first one is Facebook. And as you can see, for us, Facebook focuses on everything. It was the first social media platform, and it does a lot of really great things well. It allows you to share personal stories, and it allows you to share photos and videos and content. You'll see advertisements there and paid ads. You get detailed sections. You can find groups of people who think like you do or who want to do the same things you do. It gives you the ability to post your hours and your address, and not all the social media platforms allow you to do that. But one thing it does differently than all the other platforms as well is that it allows you to post events. None of the other social media platforms have really figured out a great way to incorporate events into their social media platform. And so a lot of younger users who won't interact with your posts are still on Facebook, so that way they can find your events. My running joke has always been, in 2020, Facebook is a place you might not want to be, but it's a place you can't afford not to be on. Instagram focuses on eye-catching cult status photography. If you don't have really good photography, Instagram's a really hard egg to crack. A lot of really high frequent users, really popular users, use their feeds incorporating patterns into their colors or use a specific filter for everything they put up there. But the thing that Instagram did really well, really early, was that it used hashtags and allowed people to add up to 30. So you could follow sunsets or Nebraska or whatever and find photographs that really would appeal to you. The other thing it did early was stories, which were vertical photographs that you can use to convey a story or to tell a message in one slice. It should be noted Instagram is not desktop friendly. Twitter is really, really good at getting out things quickly. Wired wrote, Twitter is where news is broken, links are shared, and memes are born. And it is so true. It's a great place to get out content really quickly. You can put out a lot, and it's a great place to show personality. YouTube's focus obviously is on video. And I like to tease it has the good, the bad, and the ugly. You can find clips from the 1950s. You can follow YouTube stars. You can get influencer content. You can get product reviews. You can get do-it-yourself projects, tutorials, and even now Zoom recordings, as we are all familiar with. And then Pinterest is the last one that we really use a lot. Pinterest is a platform that allows you to quit emailing yourself those links from the web that you find. They call it a visual discovery engine. So everything you see is packaged in a vertical photo. You can use it to save recipes, to find crafts, to get do-it-yourself stuff, tourism ideas, vacation ideas. You name it, it's on Pinterest, and you can save it to a board that you like. The other social that we're on that we don't use regularly are Snapchat, which is similar to TikTok, the new rave, LinkedIn, Flickr, and Vimeo. And of course, many other state agencies use LinkedIn with a huge amount of purpose, but for us, we can build the best relationships in these platforms that we've talked about. So now I'm going to hand it over to Kristen, which will take a minute, so hang on.
All right, so I'm going to talk a bit about the benefits of using social media for us here. For Nebraska Game and Parks, our biggest use for social media is engaging with the public and informing them about what's going on within the agency. At Game and Parks, as public information officers, it's our job to tell people what's going on through news releases, through hunting and regulation updates, seasonal reminders, wildlife and parks projects, events, research, educational and online resources, and then opportunities for volunteering, and most of all, stories that people have to share. So they might be feel-good stories about, hunting success, conservation officer stories of them working in the field. All of those things are very, very important to our social media. We engage with those people through direct dialogue, and that helps us build trust with the people who follow us and keep everyone up to date on what's going on. And that is important within any brand or state organization, I think. So another thing is I've been with Game and Parks since April of 2019. So when I started, we were at the tail end of flooding in Nebraska, and then we kind of transferred right into coronavirus. So we've done a lot of crisis communication, and a lot of that is just communicating directly with the public through messaging and updates on our social media channels and through our news releases. As I said, this builds trust with the community, and authenticity and transparency are extremely important to people, especially over the last several years. They've become more and more important. This also allows us to have a human side and show, kind of our personality through these platforms. Another thing is, as we know, fake news is a big deal for people. A lot of times, rumors can spread like wildfire when it comes to social media. So this is a good way for us to sort of figure out what people are talking about across Nebraska, and figure out, are there people, that might be spreading false information that we may need to clarify. Sometimes that's in terms of, wildlife education or regulations when it comes to hunting. All of those things are very important to making sure that everybody knows the facts versus rumors. Another huge benefit to social media is that most platforms are free, but have the option to run paid ads and promotions. And you can target specific audiences to do that and figure out, who you want to share certain messaging with. All right. For us, we use social media basically, as I said, to keep people up to date for what's going on throughout our agency. And a huge part of that for us is sharing our stories and photos. Usually it's local Nebraskans just sharing their social media pictures, and we often share those stories through our social media platforms and show how people interact with our parks and our wildlife. As far as each platform goes, we'll start with the big one, Facebook, the oldest, and the one with the most users. Right now, in the United States alone, there are 223 million users on Facebook, and that number is growing. We have 123,000 followers just for our Game and Parks Facebook channel. So that is our biggest channel in terms of how many people follow us. And as Shauna kind of touched on, Facebook events are a huge part of the benefit of Facebook. We use them mainly for educational and kind of workshop events that touch on hunting and wildlife education. But lately, we've also used them for creating park events, but they also share, how we are running our park events during coronavirus and what kind of protocols and measures we're taking during this time to make everything safe for everyone. So that's a huge benefit to us as well. Facebook Messenger is always also a big one for just communication. It's the #1 messaging platform in the United States with 106.4 million unique users. So that's a big thing for Facebook as well. The Creator Studio is also something that's newer with Facebook. And it's a great way to kind of plan for what you're going to post in the future if you don't have, a paid platform that you use to manage your social media channels. We do have a paid platform that we use because we have so many different channels that we run. That's called Falcon. But for those that do not have the money to pay for a big social media management scheduling tool, this is a great way to schedule future posts that are coming down the line. And it has a bunch of different tools in there to help you kind of plan out your week or your month in terms of what you want to schedule on social media. Facebook Live is another really great way to connect with people. We just had a Facebook Live last Thursday, right ahead of the deer firearm season. And we had our hunter education specialists and one of our conservation officers just answer questions about the upcoming deer firearm season. And that was, we had a ton of engagement for that. We had over 10K views by the next day, and we reached over almost 30,000 people. And I think there are still people that continue to watch that over the course of the firearm season. So that's nice. All right. So Instagram. Instagram is it's one of my favorite platforms because it's visual. It's less, I want to say it's a little less stressful than Facebook can be. It's not quite so so touch and go. A lot of it is it's deeply personal, and it's all about kind of sharing positive experiences for the most part, and engaging with people through photography. We use it, so every Monday we share Your Nebraska weekend posts. And those are 10 photos that we pick from across the state from people who tag us with the hashtag Any Game and Parks or hashtag Nebraska Land, or who geotag us through any of our state parks. And we share those 10 photos and tag people every Monday and post that on Instagram. And that's a huge part of how we share people's photography and experiences. Another big one is stories. Stories are tied between Facebook and Instagram. They're kind of married to each other. So you can share the same story through both those platforms, but they're one of the best ways to interact with people. And they are a great way to engage with people, and you can have polls created through stories. You do the swipe up to have an external link where you can swipe up to visit a website, though you do have to have over 10K followers in order to do that. But you can use stickers and a lot of other ways to catch people's attention, and it's a great way to talk about things that are immediate within your agency. All right. Okay. As far as hashtags go, hashtags are a great resource for using within your posts in order to attract new followers. These are kind of our 5 staple hashtags that we use throughout the agency. And when people use these hashtags, they're basically saying, hey, you can share these photos that I used. I use these hashtags for these photos. You know, feel free to share them on your platform. And we encourage people to do that. And that's basically how we find a lot of our user-generated content on Instagram, at least. All right. Instagram is also typically a younger demographic, so it's continuing to grow. For Nebraska Game and Parks, we're actually 50% men and women. And we have 10% ages 18 to 24, 30% age 25 to 34, and 29% 35 to 44. So we're a little bit older than this chart, but it's still a younger demographic than our Facebook users. But that's about 60% of those peoples are age 25 to 44 for Game and Parks. This is a measure of how many hours are spent, how much time is spent on Instagram versus other platforms in 2020. And as you can see, usage has gone up for Instagram, and it's actually decreasing as far as Facebook is concerned. So we're going to see a rise in the amount of people that are going to be using Instagram more often in the future versus Facebook is what is trending right now. All right, Twitter. So for Twitter is a lot about seeing what's trending right now on social media, kind of jumping on that trend, using hashtags to broaden an audience. And it's one that provides a great opportunity for using your sense of humor. And you can post as much as you want to within the platform, and it's really not going to, be as bothersome as if you're posting, 10 things a day on Facebook. So you can post, 20 tweets a day, and it's not really a big deal. You can tweet away, and it won't really affect your algorithm in the way it would on other platforms. The platform is also, as Shauna touched on, a great way to use memes and GIFs and things like that. And it's a great way to show off your personality. You really can't go wrong with humor and cute animals. All right, Pinterest. Pinterest offers, it's a great way to categorize. It offers the ability to compartmentalize your content by theme, and people can follow just one board or your entire account. We have 3 boards. We have an outdoor education, a hunt table for recipes, and one for tourism, aka our parks. So users can save that content onto their own categorized boards, and it's more personalized and easy to find. So you can search by, you can use a search term, and it shows up as a visual search, which it shows that people prefer, 62% of Gen Z and millennials say they prefer to search by image, which is something important to Pinterest that other platforms don't really offer. It's also a popular platform for women. 2/3 of Pinterest users are women, and 8 out of every 10 moms in the United States uses Pinterest. And it's also a great way to lead back into your website and to your online education resources. All right. And that covers the platforms that we use. And if you feel inclined, you should follow us. You can just search Nebraska Game and Parks Commission across all these platforms and like and follow us on social media.
Great. Thank you so much. Great information out there. Some of those I forget about pretty easily. Like, well, I'm not a Twitter user, but there's some good stuff for each of those sites. All right, thank you. All right, we are going to turn it on over to Mackenzie now, and she's going to talk with us about best practices and how to grow your following. So it's all yours, Mackenzie.
Okay, great. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Perfect. All right, like Tracy said, my name is Mackenzie Bartek. I am the Strategic Communications Manager at the Nebraska Department of Transportation. I've been with the department for 5.5 years, and I help oversee the strategic vision for a lot of the department's interactive media, including social media. I have a lot I'd like to touch on today, so let's go ahead and dive in. So when it comes to setting up your various social media accounts and managing them at a very high level, here are some things to consider. You want to develop and maintain a consistent brand across all of your social media platforms. By brand, I mean things like your account's thumbnail image, the color scheme you use, the naming convention of your account, even your graphics should all have a consistent look and feel, which immediately tells your audience that it's your account. This also helps users to trust the information you provide. If it seems professional and reliable, they can look at it and immediately know that it's legitimate. You'll also want to establish a brand voice. The goal of having a brand voice is to have every post sound like it's coming from the same person, even when it's not. You don't want followers to be able to tell when I'm posting as opposed to our social media manager, Maria. They should all sound like they're coming from the same person. When you're posting, be real. People can sniff out the fluffy fake stuff. We've all seen posts on social media before where you go, yeah, okay. Don't let me confuse you though. It's okay to push an agenda. That's what our accounts are for. Just make sure that what you're saying is sincere. Also know that it's normal and encouraged to have a different voice on each platform. Like the ladies at Game and Parks were saying, they're all different and they all have different opportunities. You can see on the screen the differences for us when it comes to LinkedIn, Facebook, and then Twitter and Instagram. Another good practice to have is to create social media guidelines for anyone who will be helping post content. Some items we address in our guidelines are hashtags to use, the target audience for each of our accounts, how often we're posting on each account, and other guidelines and some do's and don'ts for each account. This helps with consistency and continuity if an employee would shift roles or leave, or if someone needs to cover. Delving a little bit deeper now, let's get into the actual content you're posting and look at some best practices and things that you can do to help grow your audience. I think we all know from personal experience, we're much more likely to look at any post on social media if it has an image or a video attached to it. That being said, if you use an image, video, some kind of graphic, choose either the caption or the image to contain the bulk of the information, not both. Don't be afraid to interact both with your audience and with other accounts. It helps to humanize your organization when you respond to other people. With that, decide what works for your brand. Have fun with it if you can, if it makes sense for you. Some great examples of accounts that have a lot of fun with it, especially on Twitter, are Wendy's and Oreo. If you have any favorites of your own, drop them in the chat. I'd like to go and look, and I think it'd be fun for everyone else to go and look at what some big brands are doing to really interact with their followers. Interacting also provides a unique opportunity when you tag other people. Don't be afraid to tag your partners. It's a great way to get your content in front of people who don't currently follow you. So if we tag State Patrol, for instance, Cody's going to see it, and if it makes sense for them, he'll share it on their account. Once shared, our post is now in front of a brand new audience that we aren't able to reach on our own, and hopefully some of those people will see our account and choose to follow us. Two other considerations to help streamline your approach and establish a good baseline for your account is to create a content calendar and find a balance on the number of posts you share. A content calendar can be whatever works best for you, whether you establish which days you're going to post on certain accounts, what topics you post throughout the month or the year, or any combination of those things. This helps everyone involved to help strategize and plan content together. Finding a balance on the number of posts shared is also an important thing to remember. Posting too few posts means you won't appear in news feeds, but too many and you won't allow your previous post to reach its maximum impact. Your new post will overpower it. And I think there's a fine balance on each of your different accounts, and that just takes a little bit of fine tuning and practice to see what works best. Lastly, let's touch on how to take analytics from your posts and use them to your benefit. There are a bunch of analytics tools out there, both free and for purchase. So if you'd like to take analytics even farther, I suggest researching some options and seeing what works best for you. At DOT, we use Sprout, and it sounds like at Game and Parks they use Falcon. So I assume that allows them, Sprout for us allows us to schedule content as well as get analytics. If you don't have the budget or the time for that, though, you can always gain helpful insights from the analytics that are built into each social platform. It may just take a little bit of extra work to find it and to understand it. So why use analytics? What can you learn from them? Some questions that analytics can help you answer are: who are your followers? What demographic are they? What content do your followers engage with the most? What time of day do you get the most interaction? How are your followers interacting with your posts? Which platform works best for certain types of posts? In the end, it boils down to, are your followers getting the information you want them to see? And how can you adjust your content and posting to meet them where they're at? Analytics can also help you set and reach goals. You can look at things like the number of impressions of your posts, the number of followers, the click-through rate, link clicks, all sorts of different things. We use this as some quarterly and yearly goals at DOT to help us really strive to push the limits and increase our following and increase our reach. I kind of blazed through that. So if you have any questions, post them in the chat. I'd be happy to answer them at the end. Of course, come over and follow us on all of our social media accounts. We're on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, LinkedIn, and YouTube. I know that was a lot. I hope we didn't rush through it too fast. But yeah, like I said, if you have questions, post them in the chat. I'd be happy to answer them.
All right. Thank you so much. Good stuff in there. All right. Well, let's turn it on over to Cody and Rochelle. They're going to talk about utilizing social media with state government. So, Cody, are you going to go first?
I can.
Okay. I will make you the presenter.
Okay, and I'm just going to talk. I don't have a PowerPoint or anything.
Okay, that's fine.
Because the way I have always viewed social media coming from the broadcast side, I worked in radio for 11 years before coming over to the State Patrol in 2017. So I have kind of tried to stay in the commercial enterprise aspect of social media thinking, but you definitely have to adapt that to state government because we are accountable to a different set of people as we were at the radio station. I had a specific audience that I was trying to target at the radio station. I do not want to speak to just one audience. I certainly wanted to grow that audience, but I know that the state of Nebraska has a broader demographic range from border to border, urban to rural, than anyone that I was talking to at the radio station. So that's the most important thing that I've always focused on here at NSP is trying to remember who the customer is. And so one of the things we do with social media is we have really worked to diversify our voices. And by that, I'm talking specifically on Twitter because Mackenzie mentioned, and I agree with this wholeheartedly, that you want to have your agency have a voice, and especially in terms of Facebook or Instagram, where we only have one account. I want it to sound like every post is coming from the same place. But with Twitter, we've allowed our troopers across the state to express themselves a little bit more, stay on task, stay their role as a trooper, but to be their own voice. And so we have now about 30 Twitter accounts across the entire state. And we've worked specifically to work in troopers of different races. Both male and female troopers have Twitter accounts. So we're trying to reach different groups, different audiences that may not have been following me. If I was the only one tweeting for the State Patrol, I command the 36-year-old guy voice, right? But I can't speak like a 22-year-old anymore. I can't speak like a female anymore, and I wouldn't try to do that. So the things that we really have gone after on Twitter is diversifying our voice and finding the right message without compromising our overall goals. And so to backtrack a little bit with social media, the thing that I think is critically important is that you have to ask yourself questions with every post. Does it meet the goals of your agency? So specifically define your social media goals for your agency. For the State Patrol, my number one goal with every post is officer safety. So is the post that I'm about to put out there to the world going to make it safer or less safe for troopers on the road? And if there's any question that it's going to make it less safe, then I'm not posting that. If I can weasel my way into it, I've got to rephrase it. But if it's a no doubter, this is going to make a trooper's job safer out on the road, that answers that officer safety question. The public safety questions too, recruiting, community support, things like that. Those are our big themes. And so those are the goals that I'm always trying to hit on social media. So once you've got your set of voices, if they're all speaking toward those same themes, even if they're coming from a different background, a different life perspective, we've got a trooper who is extremely active in Omaha, Trooper Keith Bell. He goes into the schools, he does community service stuff. He was at the stadium Saturday, just posted a picture, a selfie of himself in front of all the cutouts in East Stadium wearing his mask, posted that on his Twitter account. I literally took his language from his Twitter account, put it on Facebook, and between the two accounts, it's reached well over 200,000 people in just a few days. I can't get inside Keith's head. I don't know his life experience or anything like that. He comes from a different perspective than I do. But the great thing about Keith is that he is always willing to engage. And so we use that opportunity, him as a voice on Twitter, to engage with so many people, probably reaching a different demographic than I would, because he's got connections as a football coach. He's got connections going into the high schools and even elementary and middle schools in the Omaha area talking to students. So he brings a different perspective to social media than, let's say, Sergeant Courtney Horick does working in Scotts Bluff on the night shift. So it's important to find what your message is, find the different tools that you can use to get that message out there. And so that's one of the things that we like to do with Twitter, especially. And then the posts that probably have the greatest impact, not everything from Twitter, we'll put those on Instagram and Facebook as well. And as the other presenters have said, the visuals are critically important on both of those platforms. Another thing I would speak to about using social media within state government is keep in mind that you're creating a public record. So don't just go willy-nilly deleting things. If you start to get ratioed, or if you post something that is just, it's not landing how you wanted it to land, don't just delete it. Make sure you're checking with your legal to get advice about what you should do in that situation, because that is a public record that you've created. If we go delete it, we've deleted all of those comments that people have given to us as state government. So just be wary of that. And that's something that you probably want to make sure you're touching base with legal. I've got this banner behind me, but our legal department is literally on the other side of the door. I try to not go in there as much as I can, but they know that that's a situation where, okay, hey, this is something that's not landing like we wanted it to. What are my options here? So just keep that in mind if you're posting. And follow the metrics, like Mackenzie said, too. The analytics are super important to knowing what is landing and what's not. So if you get into a situation where you've had a string of posts that just aren't reaching the number of people that you wanted them to, or the response to them isn't quite what you anticipated, move in a different direction. Use those analytics, know what is working and what isn't, and then what is working, try to build on that. Don't do the same post every single day. But certainly follow where those positive steps are and build on those rather than keep trying the same thing that hasn't necessarily been working over and over. And then one thing that this isn't necessarily a state government aspect of it, but it's just a social media thing. The algorithms on every one of these platforms favor the people who are active. So be present. When I came to the State Patrol, we were doing probably one Facebook post every 2 days, every 3 days, something like that. Twitter was even less common. We didn't have an Instagram account or anything like that. Those are the three that we're on right now. And in any given month on Facebook, we're probably in the range of 120 posts per month. So we've increased from about one every 2 to 3 days to 3 to 4 at minimum every single day. And that doesn't mean force it. Don't post something that's not good just to get that number, not just to have the post, but constantly be thinking about, can this be a good social media post? Can this work toward my agency's goals? And for the State Patrol, does this work toward the message of public safety and officer safety? So be present with it. One of Mackenzie mentioned as well. Sorry, Mackenzie, I just keep going back to you because you mentioned so many good things that tagging on Twitter, which NDOT does for the State Patrol a lot, and we do for NDOT. Turn on your notifications. Your phone will blow up and you'll get annoyed probably, but it's critically important. Anytime DOT tweets anything, I get a notification on my phone. Anytime any of our 30 troopers tweet anything, I get a notification. Kearney PD, Lincoln PD, Grand Island PD, OPD, all of them. Anytime any of them tweet anything, I get a notification. And it just takes a couple seconds to say, okay, yeah, that's not anything I need to be worried about. Or, oh, hey, I-80 is closed west of Grand Island. We need to get on that. So just be aware, follow those agencies, other agencies within state government and the like agencies, even outside the state of Nebraska as well, just to see what's important, what's going on, and make sure you're on top of it at all times.
Great, thank you so much. Great advice too, especially with the winter coming up. Got to know if I-80 is open or not. All right, Rochelle, I'm going to turn on over to you and you can share a little bit about your insights of recruiting, using social media for recruiting.
Yeah, absolutely. So my name is Rochelle. I'm with the State Personnel Talent Acquisition Team, and I manage the Nebraska State Jobs social media accounts, which are definitely in their infancy in comparison to everyone else participating today. But we've definitely gained a lot of momentum since I really started focusing on it in April. And we're excited at the growth we've experienced so far. I do want to apologize for my voice. I am recovering from a cold, so I do hope I can get through all of this without coughing. But I'm going to jump right in because I do have a lot to cover. So social media recruiting, or social recruiting, is the practice of using social media platforms like Facebook and Twitter to share job postings, research talent, and network with potential candidates. And I apologize, I'm going to pause for just a moment and share my presentation here, which is a very boring presentation, I will say. All right. Hopefully you all can see that now. So recruiting has drastically changed in the past decade, and a large part of that is due to social media. I wanted to share some interesting statistics that I found regarding social media as it relates to recruitment. 73% of 18 to 34-year-olds found their last job through social media. 59% of recruiters rated candidates sourced through social media as highest quality. 89% of recruiters say they've hired someone from LinkedIn, while 94% of recruiters use social media for their jobs. Only 39% of all employers use social media for recruiting and hiring. And that's actually up 37% from the year prior. And finally, 83% of job seekers prefer Facebook over any other social network. So this graph I have here, you can see that the majority of recruiters prefer utilizing LinkedIn when searching for candidates, but yet job seekers prefer Facebook when searching for a job. And this is actually came of a bit of a shock to me. As a recruiter, I like using LinkedIn the most, just because of the search features it has to offer. However, Facebook is clearly an area of opportunity. In my personal opinion, I think this is probably because Facebook is going to be less intimidating than LinkedIn. LinkedIn is a professional network, so it definitely has a reputation of being more formal. So an interesting analogy I heard recently compared searching for a job to buying a car. So think about the last time you shopped for a car. Did you buy the first car you saw in a lot? Probably not. What you likely did was go online, did some research, read reviews, and maybe even talked with your network of friends to see if anyone you know owns the same car or the same brand of car you're considering buying. And so before making a big purchase, there are many touch points that occur. And it's the same for candidates when searching for a job. They require a lot of touch points before they even consider applying. And in order to make those touch points happen, we have to sell the job and a company as a whole by engaging candidates through recruitment marketing. So what are some benefits of social media for recruitment? First, it's going to be the ability to find and connect with passive candidates. Most of the major social networks have advanced search features built right in. And by using those advanced search features, you can actively target the types of individuals you're looking for and engage with them on a one-to-one basis. Which brings us to our next benefit is supporting a two-way conversation. When it comes to social recruiting, it's important not to lose sight of what the approach is at its core, and that's being social. This means that our conversations on social media need to be a two-way street, and you should always be prepared to both ask and answer questions. And last, it helps establish credibility as a great place to work. Company culture is key to attracting talent, and a strong reputation and positive online presence carries a lot of weight for today's job seekers, especially those passive candidates. And so I put together some best practices for utilizing social media as a recruitment tool that I think everyone could benefit from, not just recruiters. So first and foremost, you want to share intriguing content, not just job postings. Social media recruiting goes beyond posting open roles from company accounts. It's important that we share content that shows your company and that it's a great place to work so you can organically attract candidates. You also want to involve your employees. Job seekers obviously are interested in posts from an official company account, but posts from employees provide a more honest, relatable peek into what life looks like within the organization. So users often trust other users' opinions more than the actual brand, which makes them such a powerful tool. According to a recent study, the average employee advocate has approximately 400 LinkedIn contacts, 420 Facebook friends, and 360 Twitter followers. And on top of that, the content shared by employees has an 8 times higher engagement rate than the content shared by brand channels. So potential candidates want proof that people enjoy working for you and your employees, and your employees are the ones who can do that. And so next, you want to participate in the right conversations. The key to recruiting on social media is to cut through the noise and find the right people. So being active in LinkedIn and Facebook groups, as well as using hashtags, are great ways to get your content in front of potential candidates. So I'll touch on hashtags a bit, which I know a few others already did. When you use a hashtag on a post, anyone who searches the hashtag on social media could discover that post. So by adding relevant hashtags to posts, you can help interested job seekers find that content. So when it comes to hashtags on Instagram, and I'd say Facebook even, really anything goes. Any word or phrase you can think of can be used as a hashtag. But research shows that LinkedIn is a little different. It is a professional network, so those hashtags aren't used exactly the same way. Best practice when using hashtags on LinkedIn is to keep them short and limit the number of hashtags to 5 or 6 per post. Next, when reaching out to candidates, you do want to do it with a personal touch. Experienced and talented people hear from a lot of recruiters on LinkedIn, and it's extremely important not to copy and paste the same message to everyone that you're trying to connect with. The best way to go about it is personalize your message and mention something about the candidate's experience that caught your attention and why you think they'd be a good fit. And I can personally attest to this. I've gotten lots of messages on LinkedIn, and they're going to be long, canned messages, and I don't even bother. But the ones I have paid attention to specifically mention my past experience or employer and say why they reached out, which is huge to me. A little extra effort goes a really long way. And last but not least is recognizing employee achievements. This is something I'd like to challenge everyone to do because it's so impactful, but it's really difficult for one person or one team to do. So I love what Cody's doing. He's pushing that out on all employees so they can provide that information. So this is something that I'd love to do more for the Nebraska State Jobs accounts. I hope this information was beneficial to everyone. Just a plug for Nebraska State Jobs. Please follow us on Facebook, LinkedIn, Twitter, and Instagram. And we'd appreciate you liking and commenting on our content.
Great, thank you so much. All right, I think we have time for a couple questions. Brian, do you have any questions for our panelists?
Yeah, one question that came in, and I think this is maybe talked about with some of the speakers, but is there a specific, are there specific state procedures for state employees that they're required to follow for social media, or is this an agency by agency policy?
I can maybe speak to a little bit of that. I think there's probably within state policy some code of conduct type things, but I think it's important for every agency that uses social media to have stated policy or stated goals, and make sure that, especially if you have multiple people using it, simple things like, are they doing it on their own phone or do they have a state phone? Every one of our troopers who is out there tweeting, they have a state phone because I don't want to intermingle what they're doing on their social media with their personal device, because then if for whatever reason something happens on their social media, they may have to turn over for an investigation or something, they may have to turn over their personal device, and that's certainly not fair to them. So we're eliminating that. But the other thing is we all have our own social media accounts, right? If you have 2 devices, you eliminate the possibility of crossover posting and messing up and post. This has happened to one very specific example I can think of is the Cambridge Police Department in Massachusetts. Their chief started tweeting something that I don't know why he was doing this, even from his personal account, but it was extremely political and negative and foul-mouthed things. But he was tweeting it from the official Cambridge PD account. He got in all sorts of trouble with that. So that's one of the things that I would specifically recommend. If you've got people using social media, get them a state phone. It doesn't cost a ton, but it could definitely save you a ton of headaches for even the possibility of cross-posting.
Very good. Great insight there. Any other comments on that question? All right. We did have some questions that came into the chat concerning hashtags, and I think one of the panelists maybe had responded to that and answered it. But there was a follow-up question of just specifically how to set them up, and how do you know if it's a hashtag that's already being used?
I responded to that, but not very clearly, I don't think. But whichever social media stream you're on, you can search in the search field for the pound sign and whatever word it is that you would like to see if it's being used. So, for example, we used the Your Nebraska Weekend. Hopefully all of the posts that would show up there would be related to something Nebraska Game and Parks, since that's our space, but it doesn't prevent anybody else from using it. So there's the chance you'll find a whole bunch of Your Nebraska Weekend hashtags being used out there as you see. But in general, the more specific you can have it be to what you want it to convey, the better it is. So for example, we're setting up a new one next year. Our parks are celebrating the 100th. So we have an Any Parks 100 hashtag that we're starting to use, with the idea that that can be the hashtag people use specifically to remember parks or share their memories or their stories related to our parks. But again, you can search to see what it pulls up so you know whether it's a hashtag you may want to use, or you can see if it's not used at all, that you can really put your stamp on it.
All right. Thank you. And we probably have time for one more question here.
Sure.
One question that came in is with some of the new alternative social media sites that are coming out, like Parler and Gap. One question is, for the agencies that are represented on this call, are any of you considering extending your social media presence out to some of these newer alternate sites?
I'll go ahead and answer for Game and Parks that we are not at this time. I think for every new social media platform, there becomes a point where you realize you do need to move into that space. So for example, we started on Facebook and Twitter, but at some point we started Instagram, and we're on the Pinterest bandwagon, and we had Snapchat, but then abandoned it because you need to be able to focus your energy where your followers are. And so I think there's, to every social platform, a point at which it becomes so popular that you need to also move into that space. But it's really a balancing act, if that makes sense.
I would agree with that. And Sean, I can't remember if it was you or Kristen who mentioned the return on investment. And I think that's the big question for jumping into a new platform. Is it worth the time and effort when there aren't necessarily that many people there right now to jump into that? I don't see a huge advantage in being in on the ground floor on something like that, because it would just take time away from other things that you're already using right now. You mentioned Snapchat. We tried that too. We didn't see the benefit of it with law enforcement specifically. There are some agencies who have seen benefit for it, but us being a statewide agency, we just haven't been as into that as others have. So we've stuck with the three that we're on right now. And if Parler takes off and becomes huge, then eventually some point, yeah, we'll go that route. But I don't feel the need to be in on the ground floor of something like that.
I think there's always an option if you wanted to hold your handle, if you think that somebody else could create an account on one of those new platforms. But yeah, like Cody and Shauna have said, if you don't have the energy to put into that new account, there's really no point in starting it up. And I think that goes for any platform. You have to decide, do we have the manpower to be on LinkedIn, Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram, or do we need to focus on one or two of those? Because not everyone does have a dedicated social media person. So you have to do what makes sense for you.
All right. Well, thank you so much for all that insight. We really appreciate all the information that was presented today. We are at 2:00. So again, on behalf of the training team and everyone who's attended today, thank you all so much for taking time out of your busy schedules to come and answer questions and present information on how we can utilize social media the best that we can in state government. So like, follow, tweet, pin, snap, whatever it is, make sure you follow all of your state agencies. That way you can be up to date on information and you don't know what you're missing out on. So make sure you go ahead and follow and like everyone. We do not have a next Ask the Experts scheduled. So if you have any ideas that you want presented, go ahead and email us, or, you know what, even better, go on social media and let us know. All right. Thank you, everyone.